it's just essentially a lot of what's happened has happened to me, but I think it's about seeing those opportunities when they do happen. So there's the old argument, are entrepreneurs born or made? Well, my father was a very successful serial entrepreneur. He had business in jewelry, fabric, steel, raw material exports. He pioneered hydroponics in Britain, which he lost a lot of money on actually. He was a bit ahead of his game, which is a method of growing stuff without soil. He had a big property business. And the diversity is incredible with my dad. He even had a fish farm in Africa. He scrapped ships in Pakistan and India. He owned nightclubs in Manchester. So a total variety of businesses. So he as my role model was a serial entrepreneur. So I never felt as attached to one business area. So I went to Salford and I left Salford wanting to get a job in the city and thought I'd be a brilliant trader. And I did an internship and found I was pretty poor really. And it wasn't my cup of tea at all. So I hated it. So I then did a postgrad at Cranfield and I focused on what businesses I could do. Now, at the time, my father's main business was exporting textile raw materials. He was the Courtaulds reseller for the whole of the Indian subcontinent. And Courtaulds were a massive integrated textile company, but they did textile raw materials, which my father sold. So we had this network of contacts in the Indian subcontinent that was second to none, but Courtaulds shut all the factories, so we had nothing to sell. So my father said, well, there's no point coming into my business. There isn't one anymore. You know, he said, what are you going to do? So I thought, I need a business where I can go the other way, because Britain's exporting less. It's going to be importing more. So I need to import. I need to switch the business from export to import. So I'd worked that out. I thought, well, what can I do? How can I leverage what I have? And what I had was this network of contacts in Pakistan that was second to none. And I read about the massively growing leather business in Pakistan. The tanning business and the leather goods business was growing massively. So I went out there and I thought, you know, I'm really interested in luggage, and I could design luggage, and I understand that whole market really well. And I got out there, and all the leather in Pakistan, 90% of it was appropriate to garments, not appropriate to luggage. So, well, I didn't really want to go into the garment business, but I thought I'll give it a go, you know, because I've got the supply, and getting the market can't be that hard. I just need to go and see the store groups and sell to them. So that's exactly what I did. And I started selling to various customers. You know, my first customer ever was French Connection. I sold to lots of the other major retailers. And then that was how I started. And the thing with the leather business is you're very busy in the winter and you've got nothing to do in the summer. So after a couple of years enjoying myself in my white suits here, as you can see, in the summer, I end up thinking, I need a business for the summer. I need to make more money than this. So I thought, what sells in the summer but not in the winter? So I've got two businesses that are complementing each other. So I went into the cotton separates business, started buying cotton separates or getting them made in initially Pakistan, then China, then India, and selling them to the store groups here. So those two businesses ran very well, complementing each other, and it was growing nicely. I was making good money. And meantime, my younger brother, had gone into importing textile raw materials, so grey cloth and yarns and things like that. And he was ticking along with that. But this business of mine was doing very well, and all was good. And then I could see towards the end of the 80s that a change was coming. The early 90s, there was going to be a recession. So I had a chat with my family and I said, what do we do about this? Because we're going to come across a recession. I said, rather than just think, you know, we've got to weather the storm, why don't we try and make some money out of it? So we looked and we thought, what's the biggest thing that's going to collapse? And the answer was property in East London, which was just being developed, Docklands. So particularly Wapping was the area we focused on. So we targeted in a very scientific way, using a new skill I'd learned at Solpac university that very few people in business at the time used, which was a spreadsheet. And I started building up cash. So we started ditching dead stock, getting ready for a recession the way you would, building a cash mountain, but with the intention of buying lots of property with a cash mountain. We got our cash mountain to a peak in June, which was fantastic. And we thought we're ready to go when this recession comes. And the bank we had all the money in went bust. So BCCI, it's the world's largest bank bankruptcy. It was a terrible time for us. We lost fortunes. The accountants advised me that I should go bankrupt. I refused and I said, we're paying everybody. You know, we'll just take a bit longer to do it, but we'll pay everybody. And there's no way we're going bankrupt. So we weathered the storm, but when I looked at my brother's business that by then was losing money and had a lot of money tied up in it, and we had to liquidate capital quickly, I had to rationalize things. So we agreed we'd merge my business with my brother's business. And I'd have to rationalize and refocus because we just did not have the cash to invest in all this stock. So I closed the yarn division. I converted the grey cloth raw fiber to doing raw fabric business, to doing higher margin printed textiles, which made more money. And I had to very ruthlessly focus on profit. And by then he started selling dust sheets, which are what painters lay down on the floor. You can see one on the floor in the picture there. And I thought, well, you know, when I go and see one of these dust sheet customers, it takes me 10 hours to get there and back in the car. I'll have a meeting for an hour. It's crazy. So what else do they buy? So the first thing I noticed was they sold workwear. I thought, well, I've got the garment skills. We can sell workwear much better than they're doing. So we went into the workwear business. And that turned out very well for us. And then a few years later, things were going quite well. And I thought, I need more products to sell into these guys. So I discovered that they also bought a lot of paintbrushes and paint rollers. And at that time, I found a contact in China who could source them. I went out to China, started buying those. So now I was, instead of doing 10 hours driving to see these guys and having a 1 hour meeting, I was doing 10 hours driving and having a 3 hour meeting, but I was selling absolutely so many times more. So that was working well. But by that stage, my brother had really lost interest in this business, and we'd got back into a situation where we could acquire a few properties. We had a few properties, and I was doing 97% of the trade at that time, so it just wasn't really working out. So we decided to separate. So my brother took the property business, and we agreed to use all the profits that were left in the business to clear off some of the property loans. And I actually in 1999 more or less started from scratch again with a full order book and a bank facility, but starting from scratch. So that was fine, and I was trading very well, and the profits were coming in very nicely. It was a really positive time. But I then went round to one of my techie friends, and he showed me this new amazing thing called the internet. Now you hear other entrepreneurs talk about the internet, and it's like nirvana to them. It's this way they've seen of making fortunes. And I'm clearly not that good, because it just scared the life out of me. I thought, as importers, we know where to get stuff. We know what the rules and regulations are and how to bring them in. And we can do the financing. Well, two of those immediately go out the window, and there'll be a lot more trust with this eventually. So really, I need to get out of just being an importer. And the importers sold to distributors, who sold to the retailers, and you know, the importers bought up the factories overseas. So I thought, right, what I'm going to do, I am going to be becoming a distributor. So I'll buy one of my customers. But I negotiated, couldn't agree on a price for either of the two customers I'd earmarked. So I couldn't buy them. So I thought, well, what do I do now? So I said, right, there's no doubt the imports are going to get cut out of this equation. So I need to buy the factories. So I went out to India and started buying factories. Now, I had panicked a little bit here because what I thought would happen in 5 years actually took 20 years to happen. But by then, I bought a lot of factories. We started off with a cooperative with 13 machinists, and at our peak, we had 850 machinists, and I wanted to build these factories differently. I was, insistent that we had fire regs. I was insistent that we had a health and safety standard. Then, as time went on, we said, well, let's get into more environmental things as well. So we did rainwater harvesting, we moved to LED lighting, we put in solar power, and then fair trade decided to do a standard for cotton, and that was really a game changer for us because we'd actually had a tough marketplace because our costs were higher because we were doing everything right. And when fair trade came along, we actually could get a premium for doing things right. So ours was the first garment factory in India to be SA 8000, which is the highest social accountability standard. We all had OS 18000, which is occupational health and safety, ISO 9000 and 14000, certified for GOTS Organic, and Fairtrade USA rated as the most ethical factory in India. So it was a wonderful journey. It was wonderful to see these this tiny group of 13 ladies in a cooperative and turn that business into the mammoth business it became. And these factories need feeding, so you have to find new markets. So we were doing well with white workwear. I thought, what's similar? Well, chef's wear. So Gordon Ramsay only ever swears in our chef's wear. We built a fantastic business in chef's wear, and we still needed, the factories were still hungry, so I needed something else. At that point, I got into cotton bags. So we did bags, sort of with a more fashion element for people like Accessorize and Next and various other retailers. And we also did the basic shopping bags for Tesco, Sainsbury's, Lidl, people like that. So our customer list has grown to really quite an impressive customer list in that business. Now, that business I continued to own until 2015, and I sold it out in 2015. And the reason I sold it out was to concentrate on another business. And I'll tell you a little bit about this now, and we'll come back to it in a minute. And this is, I think, where entrepreneurs are a bit different to people who let opportunities pass them by. I was skiing in Courmayeur, Italy with my wife Kay, and I'd got a table in a restaurant, and I'm just sort of having a beer, showing people to the table as they're coming off the slopes, and a guy comes up and talks to me and says, how do you manage to get that table? I said, oh, I spoke to the maitre d' yesterday and he seemed to like me, so I managed to get it. He said, I've been waiting an hour, they've just told me it was another hour. I said, well, you're in luck, we've got a table for 10 and there's only 8 of us today, so come and join us if it's just you and your wife. So they came and joined us. And during the conversation, I said, what do you do for a living? He said, oh, I import paint, but I've had a revolutionary idea for using textiles in automated packaging, stitched textiles. He said, what do you do? I said, I've got stitching units in India. He said, you're kidding me? I said, no. He said, well, I can't get anyone to make it. I said, well, when you get home, come and see me. So he came to see me when he got back to England. We started making things for them. Then 3 years later, I sort of had a chat with him. I said, I don't think you're running this business very well. He said, could you do it better? I said, well, there's a lot we could improve. So he said, what do you suggest? I said, I'll buy 50% of it, which is what I did. So that was in 2006, so quite a while back. But meanwhile, I had other fires burning. I was busy at that time, still with the textile business. And then we had the great banking crash of 2008. And my brother, meanwhile, after 11 years in the 11 profitable years in the property business, had built up a decent portfolio. But after the banking crisis, the banks were giving him a really hard time. And he came to see me and said, anything we can do to help? So I said, yeah. I'll buy half of it, we'll refinance it, and we'll refocus the business so it's not purely commercial, which is at the time seen as high risk, and we'll get a lot of residential in there. So we'll start buying residential. So that's what we did, and the business has grown well since then. But coming back to my friend Paul, who was looking for someone to make automotive textiles, here's the problem when you make a car. Look at all those components. And this is the problem. How the hell do you package that lot? Because if you pack it in cardboard, it's incredibly expensive, and you're throwing away all that cardboard. It's disastrous from an environmental point of view. The traditional way then is returnable packaging made of steel. But the problem with that is if you put all these parts in steel, you've then got to bring the steel containers back. So for every truck of parts you send out, you bring a truck of parts of empty boxes back. And some of these components are quite light, so they don't really need steel. So it's a real issue. So what's the answer? And here's what Paul invented. You have a plastic box, and what you do is you have textile, or this new system we've got with fabricated plastic separators. And what happens is you send all the parts in the box out to the factory. And the beauty of using textile is it nests better. So I don't know if you can see my hands on the screen. If you've got two curved components like that and you ship them together with a solid divider, you're shipping loads of air. But if you use textile, you get them really close together. So we're getting 30 to 40% increase in pack density on the way out. So if they were getting 100 parts per cubic meter, we're getting 130, 140, which is a fantastic improvement. But it gets better because once you put all those parts on the car, you collapse the box, the textile just collapses inside the box, and you send the empty back, and therefore you've got a 3-to-1 return ratio. So a typical scenario, you were sending 4 trucks out with steel and bringing 4 empty trucks back. That's 8 truck journeys. With our system, you're probably sending 3 trucks out and you're only bringing 1 truck back. So 4 truck journeys instead of 8. So because of that, our company is taking 40,000 truck journeys off Europe's roads every year. So next time you guys are not in a traffic jam, say thanks, Tariq. So who wants this? Well, just about everybody, really. Ford have been our biggest customer for many years consistently. Caterpillar at one time were, JCB have been, Jaguar Land Rover have been. We're currently working with Ineos, Europe's newest OEM. We work with so many companies, BMW, Mercedes, everybody. So Volkswagen Group are a huge customer. So we are supplying basically the whole of the automotive industry. And in order to facilitate that, we had to expand the business, so we had to make it go global. So we've got factories in the UK, Lithuania, and India, as well as a new one in Pakistan. But then we've also got sub-assembly plants that we have an arrangement with in Spain, Czech Republic, Romania, Turkey, you name it, we do it. We've also got an association with a company in the States, and we're able to supply the American automotive industry as well. So the business today, has 3 factories, 250 employees, and an incredibly varied product range and a massive amount of mechanization. The question is how we got there. So in 2003, I started supplying Paul with dunnage. 2006, I bought into the company. But the problem with that company was it was only supplying one customer, Limpac. And in 2008, Limpac's owners, Montague, wanted to buy us. So we agreed a sale with them, but they pulled out at the last minute and decided to pull out that entire industry. So that left us with a real trouble because our main customer had gone. So we formed a business called Solpac with a steel maker and a plastic manufacturer so that we could offer textile, steel, plastic, all the areas. So it was still a one-stop shop, which was what Limpac had previously brought together. And then over time, we bought out those other partners and brought that production in-house. So everything's in-house now. But on my days off, I wasn't doing nothing. So our property business has grown massively. This slide's actually a bit out of date. Our annual rent roll's near 700,000 now. We are getting closer to our 100 properties, a million rent roll target. We're virtually debt-free, and we always pride ourselves on high-quality, well-maintained buildings. You know, we're not interested in doing rubbish. If we want it to be a pleasant experience for people dealing with us in any of our businesses. So that's the way we view it. And then a strange thing happened. One of my sales guys, his wife was in the recruitment business, and she came to me for some mentoring on whether she should buy out the company she was working for. And when we delved into the accounts and everything else, there were a few skeletons in the closet, and I said to her, "You just can't buy this business. I can't recommend you buy it. It's not good." I said, "The thing you need to do is just have faith in your contacts and set up on your own, and I'll help you do that." And after much discussion, she said, "Well, will you back me?" So I said, "Yes." So I've just gone into the recruitment business. Our first official month was April. Lost money in April and May. We will turn a profit in June, which should wipe out April and May's losses. So we should be profitable by June. And it's Nikki's phenomenal energy and personnel skills, coupled with our kind of systems and contacts, has led to a really winning formula there. Got very high hopes for that business. But I don't want anyone to think I'm a workaholic. I do other things as well. I've done a lot of mentoring through TIE. TIE is the world's largest entrepreneurial networking and mentoring organization. It stands for the Indus entrepreneurs, and it started off in Silicon Valley about 25 years ago. There's now 64 chapters worldwide, of which Manchester is one, which is TIE UK North. I was president for a few years. We've really achieved an incredible amount of getting businesses started up, mentoring. I've got a non-exec directorship on one guy I was mentoring. When I came to him, he had 100,000 turnover. He's going to hit 5 million this year. So, you know, we're helping grow a lot of businesses. But it's about having fun with your team as well. We always have a laugh, a banter, and I do take time off. You know, I've done some, in these 30 years I've been building this business, I've met my wife, got married, had 2 children, one of whom's 21 this week, and done a lot of traveling, a lot of skiing, a lot of sailing, a lot of fun at home as well. You know, so we spend a lot of time together, and more than a lot of time, making sure the time we have together is really memorable and worthwhile. I think you put that energy in, you get it out. I think that's so important in life, such an important message. So, have I got any advice for people? So, first thing, business and life are all about relationships. Be brave and choose well. You know, it's so important to get the people you work with, the people you live with, the people you're going to spend your life with right. And if you've got the right people around you, you know, you'll do well. And positivity, positive people around you who give you energy. And you've got to be positive as well and give them energy. It's so important. And if you've got that symbiotic, energy-fueled relationship with, in your personal life, in your business life, life's about relationships. It's about building those relationships. And you guys are presumably all quite young. You're on the start of your journey. You really need to think about that when you get into relationships, be they personally, be they business. You know, how do I get on with this guy? Good. Second, always be on the opportunity for the lookout for the next opportunity. The trend's your friend. You can see I've changed business so many times, and I have always had a link to the next business, but it's just been going where I see the opportunities are. And You've got to be open-minded, and if you're not out there and looking and seeing things, doing that. Now, there's some people who do take that a bit far and forever looking for the opportunity, never actually focus on the one they've got. So when you see that opportunity, this is the most difficult thing as an entrepreneur. Grab it with both hands. When I met that guy skiing, you know, I could have not said join us for lunch because I didn't know him. Once there, I could have ignored it, the fact there was a potential business opportunity there. When it went wrong in the early stages because you didn't get enough information, I could have said, well, forget it. Instead, I persevered with it because, you know, when you get an opportunity, you've got to take it. And being positive is so crucial, and surrounding yourself with positive people is so crucial, but they must care. People have to care about each other. They have to care about the business. If you've got somebody who doesn't care, get rid of them. You don't need them in your life. And my other thing is dealing with situations, because you are going to have conflicts in business. You are going to have conflicts in life, even if you don't go into business. And when stuff's positive and going well, be as emotional as you like. That's absolutely fine. But when stuff's really negative and you've got to impart bad news, just stick to the facts. And don't get emotional about it. Stick to the facts. And that's a really good discipline to have. And persevere. Don't let the bastards grind you down. You know, there's always a way around something. Insurmountable objects are never insurmountable. You have to find a way around. And, you know, you don't necessarily keep charging at the rock. You look for another route. But there's always another way of doing something. There's always a solution to a problem. It's just a matter of finding it and achieving it. And, you know, never get despondent. There will always be an answer. So that's about it from me. Anybody got any questions?
Thank you so much, Tariq. This is so interesting to hear your journey and all the wonderful ways which you find opportunities and take advantage of them. I think that's really, really interesting. So if anyone's got any questions, if you want to put your hand up or type it in, that would be great. I think I've got a comment here. So Catherine's just put her question in the chat. So Catherine is asking about, so thank you very much for interesting talk and genuinely caring about social environmental impact. So Catherine is a fashion design master student and she's wrote a dissertation asking, is fashion bad? So she won the Ethics and Sustainability Award at Graduate Fashion Week in 2017. So she's stuck at the moment because she feels if you really dig far enough, it seems to me that form of participation in growth-based economy is inevitably unsustainable, because you are perpetuating the chase of infinite on the planet that has finite resources. A growth-based economy also, it seems to me, is what pushes margins down and worsens the wealth poverty. So, Tariq, if you've got some comments around that?
Yeah, I fundamentally disagree with that. I think large elements of that are true, and large elements of a growth-based economy are true. But you can grow a business doing it properly, doing it sustainably. One business I didn't include in this because I didn't want to talk for forever was a few years ago I backed a girl I was mentoring who was at Manchester University, and she won the Entrepreneurs Prize there, Naomi, and she wanted to do ethical t-shirts, and we started a business called Fair Tea, and we did t-shirts that were either made of fair trade organic cotton or that were made of bamboo and other sustainable materials. So we had an absolute emphasis on sustainability, and we also tried to make them not pure fashion, not something that's going to go out of fashion, but do more classic looks. And I think that is the answer. You know, we're all guilty of, you know, I have far too many pairs of trousers, far too many pairs of jeans, shirts. You know, we buy clothes because we like them and they're beautiful and they're lovely to touch and we like them. So that is a human instinct. But we can be more responsible in the way we deal with them, and we can be much more responsible with the way we get rid of them. So when we had Esteem and I was running Esteem, I insisted that all our marketing material, all our letterheads, all our paper, even the business cards, the brochures, everything was made from recycled cotton. So we used to take the cotton offcuts from the factory, or the scraps, and put them into a big machine that mashed them up, turned them into a pulp, and reproduced them as paper. We ended up selling the paper as a byproduct to craft stores. So, you know, there's always ways of cutting out waste, and there's always ways of using things. But fast fashion is a particularly difficult one to justify. That's an element of the fashion industry that really does consume a lot of cheap mass-produced materials, and that's not helpful. But there are elements of the clothing sector that are ethical, and I think they should be encouraged. I think there's a lot of problems in the production process in general. There's a lot of lack of accountability in the production process in the textile industry, and that's the real issue. And I think while store groups continue to turn a blind eye to it, we have a problem, and they do. You know, I saw it with the fair trade thing, where there were factories with 100 machines producing more volume than we could produce with our super efficient mechanized factory with 800. So how does that work? They weren't making those garments in those factories, were they? You know, they were subcontracting to sweatshops somewhere, and that is always the problem with the industry.
Thanks so much for that answer, Tariq. I think we have a couple more comments here. So I think Catherine just says, thank you for the frank response. She says, the way I understand it is that you would need to sell more t-shirts next year than you did this year in order to be not moving backwards, even though humanity doesn't necessarily need more t-shirts or even the same number of t-shirts. So I think, is that just one bit of clarification around that?
You can sell more. So the question is, where do those sales come from? So if we're selling more as an industry, you're right. If we're selling more as a company, we might be taking those sales off other people. So just suppose the whole world and every individual in the world became very ethical and said, I am only going to buy a fair trade or an organic t-shirt, or fair trade organic. And all the people making other t-shirts lost business, but the guys supplying the fair trade organic ones, their business would boom. So their business would be growing very quickly. So you can take business off other people as well as an industry as a whole creating more product. So I think it's two different things.
Okay, that's really great. Thanks so much for clarifying that. I think we've got a couple more comments here. We've got Richard Menbo. He is an artist, so he'd like some feedback. So perhaps later on you'll be able to just have a look at his website as an artist, whether his design would transfer to materials. So you could maybe look at that after the session. We've got Ross. So he's an international student studying in the UK. And he really wants to get into entrepreneurship. What are some of the things that I can look forward to? So perhaps.
Well, hard work, and I mean, start. You know, you have to have something. You have to have an idea, and one of the things I get, because I mentor a lot of startups, and one of the things that amazes me is how many people come to me with this unique, brilliant new product. And Justina, as you saw earlier on when I was in the conference room, my technology skills are somewhat limited. But even then, before I have my first meeting with them, I've found 5 other people that are doing exactly the same thing that they didn't know about. And I'm thinking, this is, you know, you have to be aware of that. So just because you've got something new, different, and original, A, it might not be new, different, or original, and B, just because it is, there may be a reason no one's done it before, that no one wants it. So you've got to be realistic as well. So I think you've got to temper the enthusiasm a real element of realism, and ask around, ask people what they think of your product idea. Because if you ask people what you think, you'll get feedback on, will it work, won't it work?
Fantastic, Tariq. I think that's one of my favorite piece of advice that I hear from everyone and I pass on to the students I work with. It's that market research, and it's making sure that you are looking at, what your competitors are doing, or whether there is even something that is slightly similar to what you're proposing. So it's a lot of time spent behind the scenes, but I think it's so right to be speaking to others. Whilst our students are sometimes a little bit worried that if they start speaking to others and getting that advice, the idea will be stolen. But what would you say to people that are a little bit wary about sharing their ideas with advisors?
Yeah, it's interesting. You get this a lot. And right, patenting is a really difficult process. It's very expensive. It's phenomenally time consuming. It's labyrinthically long. We're patenting something at the moment, and my design director, Dave, is crying his eyes out because he's got to fill in another 50-page answer to some questions that the lawyers have come up with. So patenting isn't easy, firstly. Secondly, when you patent something, doesn't mean your patent's guaranteed, because all someone has to do is have prior knowledge. And if they have prior knowledge, if that has been out there before in some other market, in some other place, your patent becomes invalid. So a competitor of mine offered a particular feature on a garment. We offered the same feature in breach of his patent, and he sued my customers, and then they passed it on to me. And I thought, I'm sure I've seen this somewhere before. And I went to a friend of mine in Germany. I was supplying the UK market, he was supplying the German market. And I said, didn't you tell me about doing this before, or was it your father? So we sat down, they found their old design, and they had patented it in 1956 in Germany. And these guys had patented it in the 1990s in the UK, but unaware of the original German patent. So what happened to them was, I said, we've used it with permission of the Germans here, this is the patent, da-di-da-di-da, which predates your patent. And suddenly, these guys are now going to have to give compensation to other people they've sued, because actually their patent was invalid. So it's there's nothing simple about patenting things. It's very complex, and inevitably, you are very unlikely to get a watertight patent on just about anything. It's very difficult and requires fortunes in legal fees, A, to create it, B, to defend it. So you've got to be prepared for that. So you've got to be a little bit aware and say, is my idea really that unique? Is it really that patentable? And you're quite right to be cautious, because once it's in the public domain, you can no longer patent it. So once you've shown it to enough people, you can't patent it. So you would have to have a non-disclosure agreement with people before you send it to them. So having a simple non-disclosure agreement that you both sign is not a bad thing to have. We get people to sign those all the time.
Okay, so thank you so much for that, Tariq. And I think in the spirit of education and kind of in educational institutions, advisors and people we work with, we're really not in the business of stealing ideas. So just to reassure people, we're here to give advice, and we're here to help to steer you. And again, we don't need to see all the details, but we do need to be able to know those ins and outs of the business to be able to advise and support. So I think maybe just having that trust in the professionals you're working with. But again, if you're going out there and sharing the idea more wider, and that non-disclosure agreement could be really useful too. Okay. Are there
and
any
also,
other...
one piece of advice I'll give people as well while they're on this subject, not wishing to make anybody more paranoid, but email is not secure, WhatsApp is not secure, text is not secure. Don't put anything on an email you wouldn't put on a postcard. So, be careful what you write down and send to people. That's because ideas, there are people looking at things, and ideas do get lost that way. But basically, if you can get your idea to market fast enough and with enough enthusiasm, then I would worry about the patenting later, because you probably, a startup business very rarely has the money to get something patented and the time.
Yes, I think that's a really, really good piece of advice. Is that kind of momentum in starting up that's really important. And oftentimes our businesses sometimes take a very long time to get everything right. But I think we're very much keen to say to everyone, if you can get that minimum viable product, if you can start doing some test trading and push that process a little fast, that's usually really good just to learn as you're going along. And as part of launch, you do have access to legal advice, not necessarily lawyers, but you're able to speak with our law lecturers that are able to advise on different things like patenting and contracts. So you're able to take that kind of theoretical advice and help you with the process. So in a way, it may not be the same as getting a lawyer to do that for you, but we've had students and startups actually do that themselves, just with the advice. It's not easy, as Tariq said, it's pages and pages of documents, but there is some advice that can we can help you with that.
Also, just so people know, in our business, my designers are always coming to me asking if we should patent various ideas. In the last 20 years, I've said yes to 2. So I've only seen 2 that are worth the time and the effort. And bearing in mind, we've got a multi-million-pound turnover, so can afford the legal fees. But I've only seen 2 in the last 20 years that I've actually thought, yes, we should patent this.
So I think that's really quite a unique insight there, where you think actually that frequency of those ideas is not really as high as people think that are worthwhile. So would a tip to our startups would be to get product out to market as soon as possible, and then of course if there was copycats, you then move on to the next thing. Is that a good format to have?
Well, it is difficult because, as I say, I've only seen 2 things in 20 years that have been worth patenting. So brilliant ideas don't come across that long. I think the thing to do is to be able to disseminate what's a brilliant idea and is genuinely revolutionary, and what we're super enthusiastic about is quite cool, because the latter is not worth patenting. It's got to be genuinely different. So if you're Dyson and you've come up with a new way of doing a vacuum cleaner without a bag and nobody else has thought of that, great, that's worth patenting. If you've got a new thing that's slightly different, it's going to be very difficult to patent, very difficult to enforce the patent, and you're going to waste a lot of energy on it.
That's really good advice. Fabulous. I've got a question for myself, and perhaps something that most of our students struggle with when they first start to think about starting a business, especially in fashion and in textiles. A lot of our students are very much, ethically minded and want to make sure that the factories and the supply chains they work with are, ethical, like your factories. What can students do when they're starting to engage with suppliers? How can they find out and double check that those factories are fitting that bill?
It's very difficult. One thing I've said to everyone, I was involved a few years ago in a reality TV program that was a spin-off of Dragon's Den called Tycoon, and the guy was backed by Peter Jones, and he'd had a new idea for a bag that contains bags. Oh, thank you. And he thought it was a brilliant idea. You stuff your plastic bags into this cotton bag, and was looking for a factory to make them, and he wanted them to be ethical, which was great. And I was speaking to him about the supply, and I said to him, do one thing, and I give this advice to everyone: see the factory where they're being made. Go to the factory. You can go to lots of nice offices and people will tell you lovely things about where they're sourcing it. Go to the factory, have a look for yourself. And if you see a factory with 100 machines and they're doing more than $1.5 million turnover a year, 2 million turnover a year, there's something wrong. Because you can't do that off that many machines. So see it, see the scale, see how they're doing it, look at the workers, you can get a feel of it. when you visit a factory, you get a real feel for the company. When you visit an office, it's very easy to have a nice office with a nice receptionist, a nice boardroom, a nice video link up and everything, and you know, it doesn't cost a lot. You can do that, and you don't see a thing. But go and see the factories. And this guy looked at our factory, looked at everyone else's factories, came back to us and said, we are not buying from anyone else. I've told Peter Jones, we're only buying from you.
Fantastic. So that's some amazing endorsement there for you. And
Yeah.
of course, you've had some really great success over the years. So it's great to see that, you know, new customers also recognize that. And I think with our students, sometimes there is that barrier in maybe that travel or perhaps being able to do that. But what I did want to say, if anyone wanted to join our launch program, and again, we've got colleagues across the university. We do have, when the travel does resume, that might be a while from now, but we do have some grants that we offer to students for travel to explore entrepreneurship, to explore career options. So perhaps something that's that could be an option for someone that's really interested in doing that, and they want to apply and they want to go visit their supplier overseas. So that's something that university could potentially help with the costs of that travel. Okay, I think that's all the questions. Any last minute questions? If anyone wants to put their hand up or type in, Jess has just put in a link there for us as well. So she's put in Launch Global. So what we're doing is we just kicked off this week Launch Global, which is a 5-week program. This is our first week, and this week we're focusing all about the inspiration, all about kind of bringing in some guest speakers like Tariq, so to tell about their experience of trading globally. But over the next few weeks, we have sessions that will tell you all about how to explore that idea that you have, turn it into a viable business model. You know, take it all the way through how to do that market research, how would you start marketing it, and how would you start maybe pitching for some funding. And at the end of those weeks, in early July, we have an opportunity for everyone that's interested in trading globally to pitch for some funding. So we've got £20,000 available for new entrepreneurs that want to test their ideas, that perhaps want to also use that funding to maybe explore and travel and really further their business forward. So we've got a nice pot of funding for the students that are taking part in our Launch Global program. So thanks, Jess, for sharing those links. Jess has also shared a link to the Travel Award, which is the funding that our colleagues also provide at the university. So I wanted to say a huge thank you to Tariq for sharing his journey, sharing his tips, and taking the time to speak with us today. It's been really quite a lot of really amazing insights, really great tips for our entrepreneurs. And thank you so much to you, Tariq, for that.
Yeah, and Richard, I've opened your, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's nice to come back to my old university, if only virtually. And Richard, I've had a look at your website. I mean, it looks very nice. I'm not sure what you want me to comment on exactly. So I don't know if through Justina you get in touch with me with, you know, what you'd like me to see. I've had a brief look and it looks very good. But let me know.
Thanks so much, Tariq. Yes, so we can have a look and we can again talk to Richard as well afterwards. So thank you so much for sharing with us today and the offer of chatting to our students. And really it was a pleasure to have you.
Okay, thanks very much indeed.
Okay, thanks
Take
everybody.
care.
All the best for now. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.